I need to make some title screens or something. Turn that down a little bit. That might be a little too loud. I need to make some title screens or something. What is going on, everybody? Just starting to stream up here. Got our Bible versions going and everything. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm actually gonna wait like maybe a couple of minutes just to see if anybody else joins in. I'd love to see everybody in the chat. Just say, hey, what's up? Drink some booch. Actually, that's kind of loud. It's loud in my ears, so I don't know if it's gonna be loud anywhere else. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd love to see how everybody's doing. Just like comment in the chat. Just say what's up. Say hey to me. Actually, let me go to big screen while we're waiting here. Pull up a couple of things here real quick. So guys, I'm actually on Facebook chat. So if you're on Facebook, that's really where I'm at. Say what's up. Say hey. We're about to get started here in a couple minutes. I'm just giving just a couple more seconds for people to log in. I'm sure people are going to log in and log out because that's what happens most of the time. If you're not saying something people want to hear, then they'll just log right. They'll log right out. No patience. No patience whatsoever. But if you are in and you're still watching, say hey, say what's up, so that I can know that you're here. And if you have any prayer requests, just drop those in too. I'd love to be praying for you, anything that you have going on. Speaking of prayer requests and just prayer in general, I've got a buddy who has made an app. There's so many apps out there, and they're all great. They're all really good. And, like one of the ones I use all the time is YouVersion. And YouVersion is a great Bible app. I use it all the time. I use it for the verses of the day, like that. And they have, devotionals and things like that. But if you know me, I kind of like to do my own thing, just because I feel like sometimes devotionals can box you in. And so I like to study the word as kind of the Spirit leads. And if the Spirit's not really leading me in a certain direction, then I just read it through. I just read it straight through. And I feel like the Spirit actually has led me to do that. Like if there's nothing specific that needs to be brought to my attention or anything like that, then just reading the Bible straight through is usually a really good plan. That's actually what I'm doing with my life group, with my church. And yeah, so what I was trying to say is there's a lot of great apps out there, but I have a friend who created an app. It's called rubric.church. And it's very prayer focused. It's got a Bible on it, and it's also got a reading plan on it, but it's very prayer focused. And so it reminds you to pray in the morning, pray in the evening, pray in the afternoon, and even pray right before you go to bed. So it's a really good app, and it kind of leads you through prayer. If you're like me and you have a hard time kind of just saying prayers, because it's hard, because you don't want to babble on, You don't want to babble on, but you also don't want to not say anything. You want to be saying something because you're supposed to be talking to the Lord, but sometimes you don't have anything. And I know that some people, they pray in tongues, to kind of fill that gap and everything. But some of us have a hard time doing that. Some of us don't have a prayer language, and so it's not like just something that just readily happens for us. So this is a great platform, rubric.church. It's an app. You can download it on iPhone and Android. I have an Android and I have it, and I know there's other people that have Apple iPhones, and they have it. But it's a great, again, it reminds you when to pray, and it even leads you through prayer. So, all right, so we got a couple people in here. Again, if you're in the chat, please engage. It just kind of it encourages me to keep doing what I'm doing here, and lets me know that you're engaged, and lets me know that you're here. And again, like if you have any prayer requests or anything like that, I can be praying for you. So let's get into it. So what I kind of actually wanted to go over the notes from last week, just to kind of, what did we talk about last week? What was kind of going on, what we talked about last week. I don't remember where I put them. I might have actually just deleted them because I put them up on Facebook. So actually, let me go to Facebook really quick on my computer, and we'll kind of go over what we talked about last week, just because it was very interesting. Like I actually, what I like to do is I like to kind of watch the stream again and just kind of go over the things because again, I'm doing this like we're reading the Bible together, like live. Like I haven't prepared. I'm not going through and putting a bunch of notes together to make sure that I say the right thing and to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row or anything like that. Like this is just me reading the Bible and having things revealed to me live. Like this is how I read the Bible. And so I just wanted to share that with everyone. And so, I hope that you're enjoying it. I hope that you're getting something out of it. But again, like when I go back and I watch it, like I get stuff out of it then too. So I'm trying to find the notes that I had yesterday. Here we go. So I'm pulling them up on my computer here, and here we go. So it's on Facebook. And so what we talked about yesterday was just beginning, kind of going over context, and then starting out in the chapter 1. And then chapter 1 started to become a little bit long. It was a kind of a long study, and so I wanted to take time with it because I didn't want to try to rush through it and get it done that evening, just because it was getting to the point. Actually, you know what? Let me pull up a better way to do this. A better way to view this. I can get it the bigger. That's actually the actual note size. So we went over context. We were kind of going over like these preliminary notes, and just trying to really give us a sense of like what's going on in the story. Because that's one thing as I try to be big in is I want to build that context. I want to make sure that we're getting the story, because I think that's where a lot of people get lost, is when you use the Bible as kind of like this reference book. You kind of use it as a book of instructions and rules and stuff like that. And so you look at it that way. You look at the Bible in such a manner that it's more like a Chilton's manual than it is a narrative story that is good for teaching and instruction and things like that. But it's this the story of God. It's the story of Israel. It's the story of God and his people. And so that's the main focus that I want to get, is I want to make sure that I've got the context and I know the story, I know what's going on. And so here we are. I did save the notes, but they're in online. So here we are. This is what we talked about the first little bit, that I highlighted here, that this is the Lord's message that came to Zephaniah. So this is the message that came to him. These are his the message that the Lord spoke to him. So we kind of assume that Zephaniah wrote this book, and then when did he write it? He got the message during the time of Josiah, son of Amon, king of Judah. So this is Josiah, the king of Judah at the time. So the kingdom of Jerusalem was split into two kingdoms. You had Israel on the north, and you had Judah on the south. And Judah was where the city of Jerusalem was. And this is right before Babylon came in and took the people of Judah out into exile. So that's where we're at. And then this is the message that came to Zephaniah right before that exile. And here's God, and he's saying, I'm going to destroy everything from the face of the earth, and I'm going to destroy. And he lists the things that he's going to destroy: people, animals, birds of the sky, fish in the sea. Now, one thing, and after watching the stream again, I was like, oh man, I missed a lot of things, because I would see the connection, and then I would get so excited, that I would just try to find the connection really quickly, and I wouldn't really I would explore it, but like I would try to find it really quickly. I would try to find that connection so fast, that I would skip over stuff. And so one of the connections that I was making was actually let me just go to NET Bible. Let me open up another one here for Genesis. So here we go. So in the stream yesterday, I was just trying to find that connection for the birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, and it looked like I couldn't find it. And it was just because I wanted to find it so fast. But here it is right here. I mean, I did make it, but then right here, look at this. It says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, after our likeness, so they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air or the sky, over the cattle and all the earth, over all the creatures that move on the earth." And so I think that's a better connection point for last week's stream here, where it talks about the people and the animals, birds in the sky and the fish and sea. But then also too, when I was watching the stream over, and I noticed that little bit in the end, it talks about these idols, and here in the book of Zephaniah, it talks about right in here, right in this little area right here. It's in parentheses and parentheticals, and it's the idolatrous images of these creatures will be destroyed along with evil people. Now, one thing I did want to clarify is that this text, the NET, says the idolatrous images of these creatures, which it does include people, does include animals and things like that. But the main point and the main Hebrew word that we get here is just idols. Strongholds is actually the word that it uses, but strongholds in the sense of idols. It doesn't necessarily clarify what those idols are, what those created things that were made of idols, what they were. We just know that they were idols, and that those idols were strongholds, and also that God was going to destroy evil people along with them, and evil people. So that's what the Hebrew said, and so we know that that's in there. But that made me think too, is in here in Genesis 1, God says, let us make mankind in our image. So it's still this image-bearing thing, this image bearer. God created human in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. And so this image is what it talks about. And then here in the English versions, it talks about the idolatrous images of these creatures. I thought that was a cool connection. But again, the Hebrew is just strongholds. Strongholds, specifically like an idol stronghold, is what the Hebrew word meant there in verse 3 of chapter 1. It says, I will attack Judah and all who live in Jerusalem. And then it kind of gets more specific. And one of the cool things that I saw yesterday was this kind connection between how Zephaniah 1, 2 through 3, it's kind of this reversal of Genesis 1, right? Because he talks about destroying everything off the face of the earth, and then he lists creation in reverse order: people, animals, and animals specifically like cattle, like earth-dwelling animals. He's going to destroy the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, and then he talks about the idols, these images, and then I'm going to remove humanity from the face of the earth. And humanity, again, like looking at that, it was a play on words. It was I'm going to destroy Adam, is what the ha'adamah or ha'adam, I believe is what it was in the Hebrew here. Let's actually go back really quick. Where is it here? Yeah, right here. So, yeah, here we go. Et ha'adam. And then me'al, peni ha'adamah. So that's a play on words in the Hebrew. It's also Adam, Adama. So I'm going to remove Adam from the Adamah, from the dust, and that word for earth there, and Penny, I think that's how you pronounce it again. This word right here, Penny, that one is face. So it's the face of the earth, but the face of the dirt, the dust. So it's that play on words. Again, it's this kind of creation, but it's reversal of creation. It's removing creation, it's destroying creation, this thing that God has made. And then when we go down to verse 4 and 5 in Zephaniah 1, I noticed this kind of, it reminded me a lot of Abram and Abraham, because of that one little verse. And again, like that's the kind of stuff you'll notice is when you read stuff and you see it, it's just like a huh, and it draws your attention to it. And I think it's supposed to draw your attention because I think even in the Hebrew it draw your attention because it says those who swear allegiance to the Lord while taking oaths in the name of their king. But this word that they use for their king is this Hebrew word Milcom, which is also another name for Molech. And Molech is a Canaanite king. Now, I did mess up yesterday in the stream, and I was talking about, I think I have it in the notes here. I think I have it in my notes here. Yeah, right here. I put it in the notes here that Abraham was from Canaan, and I was talking about how he was from Canaan, but he was actually called to Canaan from Chaldea. And Chaldea has a whole nother list of deities, and I looked those up, and one of them stuck out, and I can't remember what it was, but it's not really imperative right now because the connection, again, that I made was that Canaan. And again, Abraham's settled in Canaan by this time, in Genesis 22, and so he would be familiar with this sacrificial system of Molech. And so when in Genesis 22, when Abraham is called to sacrifice Isaac, it wouldn't be a weird practice. And I think that's the connection I was trying to make yesterday, is that this sacrificing of Isaac would not be a weird practice. But I believe what God was going up there to show him was like this new way of thinking, this new way of worshiping. It's not this it's not this sacrifice. Oh man, that's a revelation to me right now. And again, I'm supposed to be doing two, but we're still in one. But this, you're not providing the sacrifice. I'm providing it, and that's why the mountain is called what was it? Yahweh Yireh. Jehovah Jireh is what some people know it as, but Yahweh Yireh, which is God provides. God is my provider. Or even, you can even translate that as God sees me. God sees me. God's the one who's going to provide for me. And, so kind of this breakdown. And again, then you start getting further down in Zephaniah, and it just gets a little more specific on what's going to happen, who's going to be judged. And then it mentions the people who are going to, or it mentions these guests, these ritual purified guests. I'm thinking that these are the people who are justified. Later on in chapter, I believe it's 2 and 3, he talks about lame sheep. And I believe that's though he's going to be talking about those people who are justified, kind of how we look at sheep in the New Testament. Those are the people that were lost, but now they're found. I think those are going to be the guests, the ones that he saves. That's what I think it's going to be. Don't know yet. We're still reading Zephaniah. But I think that's what it's going to point to. So again, it starts out with this reversing creation. Then it goes into reversing the call, reversing the call of Abraham, But then it talks about saving this few. And that I think that's where we're going to go into, because I read a little bit of it, but not a whole lot. Because again, I didn't want to go too far ahead. I'm reading the Bible with you. I don't want to read the Bible for you. I'm reading it with you. So here we go. So we're getting into Zephaniah 2. And what I want to do is I want us... what are we doing here? Excuse me. So what I want to do is I really want to be more interactive, guys. So definitely in the comment section, let me know what you're thinking. What are you seeing here? What are you noticing while you're watching along with me? If you want to open up a Bible of your own, I'm reading out of the NET version. I also have the ESV pulled up on Bible Gateway, but I'm more likely going to stick with NET, and I'm probably going to go over to Zephaniah more. Zephaniah. I'm probably going to go over there a little bit more, so I'll stick between NET and those two versions. And if something kind of sticks with me a little bit more, I might go over to ESV just if I need a little bit more clarification. But if you have any insights, we're starting in Zephaniah 2. All right, so let's go. We have all this stuff. Israel is going to be, or Judah and Jerusalem are coming under judgment, and that's where we're at right now. So here we go. Verse 2. I'm going to take a picture of it, and then we're going to get right into it. If you notice a little bit of noise in the background, some music, I've actually got that going. It's some lo-fi study beats. Hopefully it's not too overbearing. So here we go. Verse 2. It says, bunch yourselves together like straw, you undesirable nation. All right, so we know that's who he's talking about. I don't like it when I clip off stuff. So you undesirable nation yourselves. So that's who he's talking about. Bunch yourselves up together, you undesirable nation, Judah, before God's decree becomes reality. So this is saying, get your stuff together before God. Actually, you know what? Let me start. Before God's decree becomes reality, and the day of opportunity disappears like wind-blown chaff. That's interesting to me that he's going to give, because he basically what he's saying is that there's going to be an opportunity to not have to suffer, and he's saying gather together. Let's see what it says in the. You know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to do this. I'm going to put you here. Or actually, I'm going to put... Sorry, guys. I'm going to put you here. Then, go back up. Then I'm going to put you here. And I'm going to put you here. Just doing some housekeeping really quick. So then I can just go like that. Boom. Problem solved. All right. So bunch yourselves up together like straw. And again, I love footnotes because they're here for something, So in the Hebrew text combines a hitpalel imperative, and a hitpalel, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but it's how words are parsed together, a parsing, especially call imperative. That's a parsing of a root word, and the root word is what is that? Kashash is what it says right here. That's the root word. It's a call imperative of the same root. Elsewhere, this root appears in the polel stem with the meaning gather stubble. So it's kind of like saying this word is like stubble. So it's kind of like a Kind of like a remnant, right? It's kind of like a remnant. So you gather the stubble together, gather yourselves together like straw, gather what's left over. You know, Zephaniah's command is ironic, implying the people are like stubble or straw. As such, they are vulnerable to the Lord's fiery judgment that will quickly consume them. Yep. Because I mean, if we look at different verses in the Bible in the New Testament, I think it's in. I'm trying to think of where it's at. I don't know. I can't think of exactly where it's at, but it talks about a house, and it talks about how the foundation is set, but it depends on what you build the house out of. And if you build it out of straw, the house will be consumed. You know, and so it's the same picture. It's because what this does, this picture for me, and again it all connects, but this picture here to me right here reminds me that this is probably a context that this would have this, you know, it would have that connotation in it. It would be that kind of straw being easily consumed, you know, is might be what Zephaniah means here, right? So it might not be remnant. It might be talking about like a remnant. That's what I think about when I hear the word stubble. But again, that's me putting my American brain in there. But really, what it could be is just, you know, fuel. You know, bunch yourselves up together like fuel for the fire, you undesirable nations. And then it says, before God's decree becomes reality, the day of opportunity disappears. Disappears like wind-blown chaff, which that's also like a straw, wheat, chaff. You know, it's that thing that when they throw it up into the wind, you know, that's the chaff is the stuff that's going to be blown away. It's going to disappear like chaff. And he's saying that his opportunity is going to pass away really quickly. So the second half of the line, and I'm reading here in this footnote here in footnote 4. The second half of the line reads literally like chaff, it passes by a day. The translation above or to the side assumes the day is the brief time God is giving the nation to repent. The comparison of this quickly passing opportunity to chaff is consistent with the straw imagery of verse 1, which is what I was saying. And I think it's interesting that they mention the day in there, but they don't mention it in the translation. It does in Zephaniah, which again, this Zephaniah is it's a Hebrew text, so it's basing it off of probably the Masoretic text. And so let's see. So let's look for the word yom, which is day, right here. Yom, day. What is this word? Also, right here, anger, nostril, face. This is, I think it's off Yahweh. So of God, or like the, this is day. This word right here, what is this word? Height upon ground. Not. This is Lord's anger. I believe that's what this word here, this off Yahweh. I believe that's like the anger of the Lord. Because right here is anger or nostril, or even nose, the nose of the Lord. The day flies before the fierce anger of the Lord overtakes you, before the day of anger. Oh, this is also Yom here. But then this is Yom. So this is probably the day like chaff. This is the one I'm looking for. This is what happens when you don't like read Hebrew. Yep, pass away. That's what this word here is, pass away. So this is chaff, which is kimotz, chaff. Cool. And the reason I do that, guys, and I know some people get caught and they get lost and they're like, oh man, this is boring what he's doing here. But it's really just for my understanding. I want to understand. I want to make sure that I'm understanding it in the context that it was written in, which is, this Hebrew Jewish mindset, So I want to make sure I get that imagery, because you're going to see it again. You're going to see it again. Definitely in the New Testament, because they were Jews. Most of these people were Jews, unless you count Luke, who was not Jewish. He was a doctor, But Matthew, Mark, John, they were all Jews. They followed Jesus. Paul was a Jew. Didn't follow Jesus at first, but so those are going to be littered with this Hebrew context, and so I want to make sure that I understand that. And so it seems like rabbit trails, and it's a little bit like rabbit trails, but I just want to make sure I get the understanding here. And so when it talks about here, bunch yourselves up like straw, and we can say, like, to me that seems like it's talking about a remnant here, but then it could also be this imagery of fuel for like a fire. Then he talks about you undesirable nation. Before God's decree becomes reality. And what is God's decree? God's decree is judgment. Judgment. He's going to judge Israel. He's going to destroy it. That's what he talks about. And then he talks about this day of opportunity. This day of opportunity. It's this time, this reprieve. Reprieve? Reprieve? Reprieve. I don't know if I'm spelling that right. I before E except after C. So I might have spelled it completely wrong here. No, I did. I spelled it right. Look at that. So this reprieve is going to end. This reprieve, it goes away like chaff that's blown in the wind. Wind blown chaff. It's going to go away. This opportunity that you have, it's going to go away. And then it talks about before God's decree becomes reality, the day of opportunity disappears like wind-blown chaff before the Lord's raging anger overtakes you. So he says, so he's talking about doing this thing right here. Bunch yourselves up together. So gather together. Maybe it's kind of like, get your stuff straight. Before, because he's telling them, like, you guys need to do this before. You need to come together like straw before this happens, before my decree becomes reality, and this reprieve that I've given you is gone because it's quick. You're going to think it's going to take forever. You're going to think it's been a really long time. And that's what he was talking about in chapter 1. He talks about we're talking in verse 1. Where did it go? There was one where it was talking about it talks about this. It talks about like wine. It's approaching quickly. Will not drink trumpets. Will distress. They will stumble. Their flesh will be scattered like silver. The whole will be consumed. There was one verse in here though, and it was but it was basically like they've just been sitting, they've grown complacent, in the way that they act. Actually, I believe it was right up here. Those who turn their backs on the Lord, don't look for the right here. Be silent before the Lord. Those who wore clothes. Well, shoot, man, it's all in there. What I was talking about yesterday, but it talks about how they were just kind of. I don't know where I read it. I know I read it yesterday though. But it talks about it was this word, and I can't remember what it was, but it was very much like where they just kind of get complacent. They get complacent and they start to rot. Again, I can't remember what it was at. I can't remember where I read it from. I thought I read it from Zephaniah. Anyways, so let's keep on going here. But so wind-blown chaff, before it overtakes you, before blows, like this reprieve is going to go away. Bunch yourselves together before the Lord's raging anger overtakes you, before the day of the Lord's angry judgment overtakes you. So he repeats this, overtakes you. Oh yeah, I can do that. That's a lot easier. Overtakes you. Overtakes you. This is repeated. Overtakes you. Overtakes you. Does it say it in here too? Overtakes you. Overtakes you. I wonder if that's like a and this is just a cool thing for me, but I wonder if it's like a repeater in the Hebrew. Overtakes you. Overtakes you. Overtakes you. Overtakes you. I'm sure it is, because it's the exact same word of the Lord, because it's before the fierce anger of the Lord overtakes you, before the day of anger of the Lord overtakes you. Is that what this is? No. This is the day of the Lord. And it's so funny because this word right here is anger, but then it's also like nostril and nose, which is kind of this word off the Lord's anger. So like anger is like this word, and it's aleph with a and then it's this word off, which is also translated as nose or nostril. I just find that interesting, so I'm going to put it up here for future purposes. But anger, nose, Yahweh. That's that word there. And then what is this word here? Anger. Anger, heat, burning, always used of God's anger. This word right here is the height. And that's what this word is here. Upon, because, upon, over. So kind of like come over. That's what this word here. This what is this? Alechem, Yah, off Yahweh. It's not really, like, for me, I don't notice anything really substantial about it, I don't really, like, whatever. Hey Lillian, hey Daniel, what's up? Say hey in the comment section. Leave me a comment. Just going off on a tangent really quick, because I noticed that this word overtakes you is twice. And for me, I don't see anything significant about it, except in the English, it's just like kind of like overtakes you. But then it talks about, the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord's anger is raging anger, before the day of Lord's angry judgment overtakes you. So let's go here. Verse 3, seek the Lord's favor. And this is where we got our the whole inspiration for this whole dealio right here. This was the Bible YouVersion Bible verse of the day. That was yesterday. It was verse 2, verse 3. So here we go. Seek the Lord's favor, all you humble people of the land who have obeyed his commands. Strive to do what is right. Strive to be humble. Maybe, this is what I like right here. Maybe you will be protected on the day of the Lord's angry judgment. And so what that tells me is like the law, like the commandments. Actually, let me do it over here. What that tells me is like the commandments, like they don't guarantee protection, right? That's what that word maybe. That's when I see that word maybe in English, I'm like, that's not like a guarantee. Yeah, even in Zephaniah, it's perhaps. Perhaps. What is the word perhaps? Right there, perhaps. So it's Ule. That's how you pronounce that. Ule. Perhaps, peradventure, unless, suppose. Humility. Perhaps he'll conceal you. What was that? Anyways. So perhaps there was a couple of knocks. I don't know what it was. It might be Nikki. But yeah, so and the thing is, and what is this? A footnote in 12. What is that? 12. Yeah, it may be that you will find shelter. Perhaps you may be hidden. And that this is actually. It seems that this is a better translation. Perhaps you may be hidden. From the Lord's judgment, and that's the thing. It's a sparing. It's a sparing, but it's also like, you're hidden from these things. It's kind of like, and I meant to say this at the beginning, but happy Passover for everybody. But it's like that Passover. They were hidden from the Lord's judgment, with the smearing of the blood. And so here's God. He's saying, hey, bunch yourselves up together. Seek the Lord's favor, all you humble people of the land who have obeyed his commands. All the ones who have obeyed his commands. And there's a footnote there. The present translation assumes the Hebrew term mishpat here refers to God's covenantal requirements and is a synonym for the law. The word can mean justice and could refer more specifically to the principles of justice contained in the law. In this case, the phrase could be translated, who have promoted the justice God demands. Now, that's a cool, I like that. I like that, it could be kind of thing, because if you look in chapter 1, what does it talk about? When it gets to, like, look at this right here. In verse 9, it says, on that day I will punish all who leap over the threshold, which we really don't know what that means. It could mean, it could be some euphemism for idolatry. But then it says, who fill the house of their master with wealth taken by violence and deceit. So I bet that is idolatry. Where he talks about leaping over the threshold of another god's temple. And you fill that house of your master with wealth, so with offerings and that were taken by violence and deceit. And so that's what. So if that's what this mishpat word here in Hebrew, mishpat, if that's what that's referring to, not just that you're holding the law, but that where you're humbling yourself and you're being just, you're promoting justice that God demands. And then it says, strive. God says, strive to do what is right, strive to be humble. And maybe, perhaps the Lord will hide you on the day of his angry judgment. Indeed, and then it goes on here. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. I don't think there's any more message in this. It's just like, hey, look, gather yourselves together, repent, seek the Lord's favor, strive to uphold His commands, or even just strive to uphold God's justice, and maybe you'll be protected. Not a guarantee. I like that. It's not a guarantee. The reason I like that is just because it's this idea that I have power over what God is and isn't going to do. So, like, if I repent and everything like that, then I hold back God's judgment. But that's like, it's not a guarantee. It's not God is, if we believe in God's sovereignty, and that's something that comes up in chapter 1. If God is sovereign, and sovereignty means like they govern themselves. That's what sovereignty is. So if we believe that God is sovereign and He governs Himself, there's no one that rules God. So He's going to do what He's going to do, and you can seek the Lord. And God's even saying, "Hey, seek my favor, humble yourself, uphold the commands, uphold justice and righteousness, strive to do what is right, strive to be humble, and maybe I will hide you from judgment. Maybe you will be protected on the day of the Lord's judgment." So let's keep going. Verse 4. Indeed, Gaza will be deserted, and Ashkelon will become a heap of ruins. Invaders will drive away the people of Ashdod by noon, and Ekron will be overthrown. I think this is pretty straightforward. Now, one thing I do like is when people try to read prophecy and they're like, yeah, and history shows that at noon o'clock, the cock crowed and Ashdod was in ashes. It's like, I don't need that. I don't need that specificity, because one thing I do get is literature. Literature, and this is one thing I want to make clear. And this is something that I have to remind myself in my brain, is that literature doesn't mean that it's false, or that it's it doesn't mean that it's false, and it doesn't mean that it's fiction. Literature does not mean false or fiction. Literature just means writing. Right? That's all literature means. Is that this is a form of writing. This is a form of literature. But I do think that there is literary context that needs to be taken into account when you read things. And so, because this says Ashdod, invaders will drive away the people of Ashdod by noon, for me, that doesn't mean, like, if this didn't happen at noon, it doesn't discount the rest of the text. You know what I'm saying? That's what I mean. Like, just because something doesn't happen exactly like it's written, doesn't make the prophecy less true. And that's all I mean. It's just like, so, because some people like to be so black and white, they like to be so what's the word I'm looking for here? They like to be so literal that, like, if Babylon invaded Ashdod at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then that would discount the whole rest of the passage, and I think that's silly. So, anyways, that's my soapbox. Let's get off this. Let's get off this soapbox. Boom, boom. All right. So, anyways, So I'm going to take another picture for verse 5 and following through. So let me go back over. All right. And then take a picture. Boom. I like that one over to my other desktop here. Hey everybody, what's going on? Definitely say hey to me up in the comments. I'm getting lonely up here. Sometimes I think I'm just talking to myself. But definitely say hey in the comments section. If you have anything that you're like, maybe you're just liking this. Maybe you're just like, man, I've never thought about stuff like that. Give me a thumbs up or a heart, or, just say you love it in the comments, something like that. If you think I'm a heretic, say that down in the bottom and I'll delete it later. But, at least I'll know that somebody thinks I'm a heretic. If you've never thought about the Bible this way before, definitely let me know. So let's keep on going here. We're in verse 5. This is Zephaniah 2. It says, beware you who live by the sea. Actually, hold on a second. Boom, boom. Beware you who live by the sea, the people who came from Crete. The Lord's message is against you, Canaan, land of the Philistines. I will destroy everyone who lives there. This is in quotes. Do you see that? This is in quotes. So that means there's something there. This is usually quotes means it's quoting something else. That's usually what quotes stand for. And so that catches my attention. And that's another thing too, is just like, let things catch your attention. Let things catch your attention. And then just dive down that rabbit hole. I will destroy you so there is no inhabiting. This could just be like these are direct words from the Lord. That could be what this means. Let's look at the Hebrew here. Lay you waste without inhabitants. So here's that word, Eretz. And yesterday we were talking about the difference between Eretz, when Eretz is used for land, and then when Adamah is used for land. When you see the word land, definitely go back and look in the Hebrew, because it could, if it's talking about Adamah, it's more like a soily type land, and then when it talks about Eretz, it's just talking about land. But then again, Eretz is also sometimes tree. I think sometimes is what it's translated as well. So what are we doing here? Canaan. What is this word? Debar, the word. This is interesting. That's interesting. I don't know if you saw that. But it's, beware you people who live in Crete. And I bet this is footnotes right here too. Yep. Beware you people who came from Crete. And then if you look at this footnote here in 18, the Kerethites is what it's, I guess that's how you pronounce that. A people settled alongside the Philistines in coastal areas of the southern Palestine. And then it gives you some reference here. We conducted a raid on the Negev of the Kerethites, on the area of Judah, and on the Negev of Caleb. And then here in Ezekiel, so the sovereign Lord says, take note, I am about to stretch out my hand against Philistines. I will kill the Kerethites and destroy those who remain on the seacoast. That's in Ezekiel. They originally came from the island of Crete, so that's why it's the people who came from Crete. But this is what I find interesting, and it's not noted in here. this word Kerethites means executioners. And here in this footnote on Zephaniah, it's a group of foreign mercenary soldiers who served as bodyguards for King David. They were also executioners. So if you kind of follow that context, if you follow that context here, if you go back to these notes here where it talks about right here, you who have obeyed the command, and then the footnote there was like those who obey the command. The footnote for that one was it could translate as those who promoted the justice of God's demand. So like it's this idea of nonviolence. Nonviolence. It's these people who uphold God's judgment or justice. Sorry, not judgment, but justice. They uphold God's justice. So they treat people. They treat people with nonviolence. And that's one of the things that's up here in chapter 1. It talks about the people that are judgment. Wow. Where'd it go? Fill their house with wealth taken by violence and deceit. So it's that judging the violent people of Israel, of Judah, the people that are left in Judah. So it's all about, like you keep getting this kind of refrain about nonviolence. You get this refrain of people who uphold God's justice, and even it talks about sheep, in chapter 1. And so now that makes me think these cities here, Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Ekron. Like, what kind of cities are those? Like, what's significant about those cities? Like, I'm just brushed them off because I'm like, oh yeah, these are cities, But what are they? Deserted. I don't want to go too far into because that's a rabbit hole. That's a rabbit hole. I like this right here, what it talks about right here. And this is kind of what I was talking about with the whole literary thing. You have to look at like literary meaning because it could suggest just a quick defeat. And then Ekron, uprooted. Sounds like the word translated uprooted. Hold on, guys. Sorry. I'd like to look more into that. Because that might be a little bit more significant than what I was making it out to be. It might not just be something that you brush off. It could be something that has a little bit more impact, a little bit more weight to it. Because again, like I was saying, if we look at these people who came from Crete here, they were executioners. And they were personal guards for King David. And so they were almost like men of violence. That's just what I'm getting here. That's like, if it's this kind of refrain that I'm getting, it's this judgment because of violence kind of thing. Judgment because of violence, and that's why I'm like, these cities that he's naming off, they might be specific cities that are known for their violence, and so I want to kind of go into that a little bit further and see if that's true. That's something that's like a deeper study, but I mean that's very interesting. And here it says, "We'll destroy everyone who lives here." It looks as though just from this really simple reading again, it just looks like that's just a quotation from the Lord. That's what that looks like. So let's continue on to verse 6. The seacoast will be used as pasture lands by shepherds and as pens for their flocks. Those who are left from the kingdom of Judah will take possession of it by the sea. They will graze. In the house of Ashkelon they will lie down in the evening. And for the Lord their God will intervene for them and restore their prosperity. So this is definitely talking about a remnant. There's going to be people that are going to there are people, and that's why, you know, when stuff is said prior and it talks about just wiping everybody out, you know, it's just giving kind of this weight. What's up, Lonnie? It's just kind of giving this weight of the seriousness of this. And I actually listened to a really cool podcast, and it was talking about how God mourns for the wicked and everything. And I think that's kind of this is the weight that the Lord feels. This is what he feels that he's doing. It's like he's just completely destroying his creation, you know, but he's taking the sea away. He's taking these coastal lands away from the violent. And who's he giving them to? He's giving them to the shepherds. Those who are left will take possession of it. By the sea they'll graze. They'll lie down in the evening. Where are they going to lie down? They're going to lie down in green pastures. What does that sound like? They're going to lie down in green pastures. So he's going to take it from the violent. He's going to give it to the peaceful. Actually, I kind of want to look that up. I can never remember. Somebody out there knows exactly what psalm it is, and I don't know. Psalm, lie down, green pastures. Psalm 23:2. Matt, you should have known that. Let's see, BibleGateway.com. Actually, you know what? Let's just stick with netbible.org. Psalm 23:2. So let's go here. Psalm 23, verse 2. It says, this is a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He takes me to lush pastures. He leads me to refreshing water. He restores my strength. He leads me down the right paths for the sake of his reputation. Even though when I walk through the valley, or the darkest valley, I'm saying it because, you know, you hear it so much. When I must walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff reassure me. You prepare a feast before me in plain sight of my enemies. You refresh my head with oil. My cup is completely full. Surely your goodness and faithfulness will pursue me all of my days, and I will live in the Lord's house for the rest of my life. But look at this. This is what I like right here. I'm going to take a picture of that. This. Because he leads them out to lush pastures, refreshing waters, restores their strength, leads them down the right paths for the sake of his reputation. And that's who he's taking away these coastal lands here. He's giving them to shepherds. And he's going to put these shepherds in these pasture lands so that they can lie down in green pastures. For the Lord will intervene for them and restore their prosperity. Just going to leave that at that. Verse 8, I have heard Moab's taunts and the Ammonites' insults. They taunted my people and verbally harassed those living in Judah. Therefore, so all of this right here, and this is again, these are quotation marks. So this is the Lord saying this, and let's just make sure here. Let's go back to Zephaniah 2. So we are in verse 8. I have heard Moab's taunts and the Ammonites' insults, and they, 28, Okay. Who? So it says the Ammonites insults taunted my people and verbally harassed those living in Judah. They enlarged their own territory. And they bragged about the size of their own territory. Therefore, so because of all this stuff, because of the things that they're saying, that's what therefore is like a direct, like this is, it's directly talk about that. Therefore, as surely as I live, says the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of Israel, be certain that Moab will become like Sodom and the Ammonites like Gomorrah. Now, what is this talking about here? Of course, he's talking about destruction. But usually when a city, hey Jennifer, usually when a city is compared to another city, it's because they also share attributes together. And I think that is what attribute do they share here? Violence. Because again, let's look back here at this 29. And they made great their mouth against their territory. Other possible translations include they enlarged their own territory, and they bragged about the size of their own territory. So they belittled God's people. You know, kind of a verbal violence. Maybe I'm stretching. I don't know. I don't think so. Because that's the refrain that I keep getting from these passages is this refrain of violence and violent people, even people who mock and who don't worship the Lord. You know, people who sacrifice their children for other gods. You know, that's what I'm getting here. That's what I'm reading here. And so I'm kind of reading that just like, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah, because Sodom and Gomorrah, if you read that story, that's a Genesis story too. So it ties it back to Genesis a lot. Hold on a second. I'm going to actually like Psalm 23. Sodom and Gomorrah, the sin that they had was also they were violent people. I think it even says that in the book of Genesis when it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah. Actually, let's just Google it really quick because I don't want to sit here and Google. Why am I Googling Google's website? Google Sodom and Gomorrah Bible versus it's Genesis something 18. So we go to Genesis 18. Let's see. Let's read it really quick here. Sorry, it just talks about their sin is great. Their sin is blatant, heavy, severe. Look at this. So in Ezekiel, it actually talks about, if you look at the connection here, it includes 3 types of sin of Sodom. One was failure to help the poor and needy while they were prosperous. So it says in Ezekiel, she and her daughters had majesty, abundance of food, and enjoyed carefree ease, but they did not help the poor and needy. And then in verse 50 of Ezekiel, and we're reading it from right here where I popped it up here. It talks about they were haughty and practiced abominable deeds before me. Therefore, when I saw it, I removed them. That's interesting. But I think we can also, again, we could say that because even then, what I was saying here, of course I said verbal violence and all that stuff like that, but I actually think, from reading those little clues right there, and that's, again, this is one of the reasons why. Don't just read something. I think it clicked away. I don't know why it did that. Or I know why it did it, but I hate that it did that. But, what was I saying? So I'm reading Ezekiel here. And see, I was talking about all this stuff being popped down and everything like that, and you didn't get to see it here. So here, Ezekiel, I'm reading in Genesis 18 about Sodom and Gomorrah, and Ezekiel 16, 49 through 50. If you read it right here, it says, see here, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom, and then everything that I just read. And so when I look back here, it talks about how be certain that Moab will become like Sodom and Ammonites like Gomorrah. I don't think it's just, they're going to be destroyed. Because there's been other cities and stuff that have been destroyed previously in the Bible, but I think there's a connection between the sins that they had, and I was saying, it could be verbal violence, it could be verbal violence just because of the way that they're acting, and they're kind of being haughty, and they're throwing insults, and they're taunting about how much more land they have compared to Judah, and everything like that. And that's actually like they're, hold on a second, not that. They're like, these cities lack generosity. Which is also a form of violence if you want to get, technical. They lack generosity, and they're over here. And again, let's go back to this footnote here. Verbally harassed Judah in 29, I think that's what it was. So they made in Hebrew it's translated, they made great their mouth against their territory. So they specifically were specifically taunting how small Judah was comparative to themselves. They bragged about their size in their own territory, and then God is saying you're going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah, like I'm going to give you the same fate, but also comparison saying that you lack generosity. You lack generosity, and you push people down with your words, and you harass them and insult them and taunt them because you're great and they're not. So that's verse 9. So now let's go down here to verse 10. How much more we got? We don't got too much longer for this. So let's go down to verse 10. Let's take a picture, and then let's read it. Verse 10 here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to drink some booch. What's going on, everybody? How's everybody doing? All right, let me know if you like the lo-fi hip-hop stuff. I really like lo-fi hip-hop because it's very soothing, and it puts me in that frame of mind of like really, really studying. So anyways, we're in verse 10. This is Zephaniah, chapter 2. I know when I did my initial post, I said Zechariah, but we are in Zephaniah. So, verse 10. This is how they will be repaid for their arrogance. And see, I think look at that. For their arrogance. And then what is this? 35, it talks about arrogance. And then it's got a little footnote here. This is for them in place of their arrogance. Okay? For they taunted and verbally harassed, made great their mouths against. It's a weird Hebrew translation. Because they made their mouths big, like they shot off at the mouth. They have big mouths. For they taunted and verbally harassed the people of the Lord's heaven's armies. The Lord will terrify them, for he will weaken all the gods of the earth. All the distant nations will worship the Lord in their own land. This is, I would challenge anybody to go and read Unseen Realm by Dr. Michael Heiser. Go and read that book, because he talks about how in the Bible, because a lot of times what we like to do in our American brain here, we like to take things like this where it says all the gods, and we like to replace this word, because it's little g, we like to place this word as idols, when really the people of Israel probably believed that there were gods. There were other spiritual beings. Jennifer, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to do this as often as I can. I want to try to do it every day, just because I've actually found enjoyment. I've done it the past 2 days. I did Matthew 18 2 days ago. Then yesterday I did Zephaniah 1. So now we're in Zephaniah 2. So hopefully I'm going to be doing this a lot, especially if I get like a good response. If people like what I'm doing here, I like doing this. I like breaking down the Bible and really getting down to the meat of what it's talking about. So let's get back into it. Verse 11. The Lord will terrify them, for he will weaken all the gods of the earth. Is there a footnote there? I didn't. Weaken. 39. The meaning of this rare Hebrew word is unclear. If the meaning is indeed weaken, then this line may be referring to the reduction of these gods' territory through conquest, starve when he destroys, shrivel. Now, so this is interesting. He will weaken. This is interesting, guys. I don't want to go into it too much just because it is, but look up Unseen Realm, or you can even just look up Dr. Michael Heiser and Deuteronomy. Hold on, let me look it up real quick. What is it? Heiser, Deuteronomy 32. I was going to say 12. So look up Dr. Michael Heiser and Deuteronomy 32, and then go back here to Zephaniah 11, because that's an interesting take on it. It's a very interesting take on it. So, all right, here we go. All the distant nations will worship the Lord in their own land. So he's going to take back he's going to weaken the power of these gods, and he's going to bring back worship to all the people of the lands. Then he quotes, here's a quote, "You Ethiopians will also die by my sword. The Lord will attack the north and destroy Assyria. He will make Nineveh a heap of ruins. It will be as barren as the desert." So again, like I really want to explore these lands and see why he's talking about this, because again, if you remember in chapter 1, he specifically talks about Judah, and he specifically talks about Jerusalem. But now he talks about Moab. He talks about Moab. He talks about the Ammonites. He talks about now he's talking about Ethiopia, and he's talking about Assyria. Talking about Assyria and Nineveh. You know, I think it's interesting because Zephaniah 1 was all about judgment against Judah and Jerusalem and telling the people to turn back. And then then he starts talking about this remnant that's going to be left, and he's going to justify them. That actually reminds me of what we talked about earlier. That actually reminds me of what we talked about earlier, right here, where it talks about the Lord has prepared a sacrificial meal. He has ritually purified his guests. And on the day of the Lord's sacrificial meal, I would punish the princes and king's sons and all who wear foreign styles of clothing, those who have assimilated. But the sacrificial meal for the guests, that's what it's reminding me of is he's just kind of laying out all these people of judgment. But again, it's very strange. They talk about Judah and Jerusalem, and then he just starts naming off all these other places. He will make Nineveh heaps of ruins. It will be barren as the desert. Flocks and herds will lie down in the middle of it, as well as every kind of wild animal. Owls will sleep in the top of its support pillars. They will hoot through the windows. Rubble will overcome the thresholds. Even the cedar work will be exposed to the elements. So this is just like talking about total and utter destruction. And nothing's really sticking out to me. You know, I mean, it is sticking out to me a lot. Barren as the desert. Flocks and herds will lie down in the middle of it. So he's talking about this almost like he's talking about those coastal areas are just going to be, that's horrible rain running, these coastal areas, and they're just going to be so open that, like, that's the way it sounds to me, is that it's just going to be so open and desolate that wild animals are going to appear in it. Excuse me. Owls will sleep on the top of its support pillars like trees. You know? I wonder if that's significant here. What is that saying? Because there's a footnote here. Anytime there's a footnote, guys, like, and you're like, it's weird, like, just read it. It says, let's see, 49. So the text here, this is the footnote here. The Hebrew text reads here, Gam, Ka'at, Gam, right? Yep, Ka'at, Gam, Kipad. The term Ka'at refers to some type of bird that was typically found near ruins. One of the most common translations is owl or horned owl, desert owl. The term kipad may also refer to a type of bird, ruffed buzzard, I'm guessing, a screech owl. Some suggest a rodent may be in view, hedgehog. This is not unreasonable, for a rodent or some other small animal would be able to sleep in the tops of pillars, which would be lying in the ruins of the fallen buildings. So it's just like laying everything to waste. But one thing I do like here in this, in what, sorry, I hate that it switched back like that. So I highlighted this footnote here when we went and we talked about, where is it at? Verse 14, it talks about owls will sleep in the tops of its support pillars. And then here in this footnote in 49, it talks about how one of the most common translations is owl. And then the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, I think is what that is, says desert owl. Now, one thing, so we see here as barren as the desert, and then it talks about owls being out in the desert. But then also the desert, let's see what this is in Hebrew, desert. Because sometimes desert is, look at this, well, the jackdaws. That's weird. Porcupine, hedgehog, shrinking animal. It's very weird. Where was I going here? Maybe this word. That's flock. I'm looking for the word for desert, and I can't think of what it is. I can't think of what the word for desert is. It might be this. Nope, that's a crown. A pillar. Huh. So what's the word it's using for desert here? Because right, that's what what verse? Oh, it isn't 13. Jeez. Arid as the desert, and the word they're using for desert here. Yeah. Midbar. Ka midbar. Ka midbar. The reason I'm even worrying about that is because I want to see when. Actually, I should be looking this up in Zephaniah. When God cast Adam and Eve out into the wilderness, I want to see if that's the same word, because midbar is very midbar is like a desert. Or wilderness could be a different word, and I want to see that. I want to see when he talks about okay. As far as Genesis goes, it doesn't look like it's talking about midbar, but like usually in Hebrew scriptures, when it talks about midbar, it's talking about the desert, the wild. It's actually like sometimes it's not midbar. It doesn't even mean desert. It just means the wilderness, like where the wild animals are. So there could be vegetation there, but it's if you almost think of it just like as a plain, or like as even you can even look at it like as like a bog almost, like there's just death and destruction. But that's what it's talking about here. And I just found that whole owl reference. I was like, wow, that's a specific, but again, like this could also be translated. Somebody it said in the Zephaniah that it could be translated, and even in the NET Bible notes it said it could be like a hedgehog. But really it just kind of connotes that word that you're using for owl is just some sort of I know the word scavenger, like some kind of scavenger animal. Some kind of scavenger animal is going to be out there. And it will hoot through the windows. Rubble will cover the thresholds. Even the cedars will be exposed to the elements. And we kind of get the gist of that. That's like, nothing will be left. Like all the buildings will be rubble. So here we are at verse 15, which is the end of. Let me get here that. Okay, so here's the footnotes for that. So maybe I won't have to keep scrolling back and forth. So here we are. We're in verse 15. We're coming to the end of chapter 2. This is how the once proud city will end up. The city that was so secure, she thought to herself, I am unique. No one can compare to me. Excuse me, guys. Hold on. No one can. What a heap of ruins she has become, a place where wild animals live. Just kind of reinforcing, what was just said. A place where wild animals live, a heap of ruins. Everyone who passes by her taunts her and shakes their fist. So is this still talking about? This is what I want to know. Is it still talking about Nineveh and Assyria? Nineveh, Assyria. Like, is that it? Or are we talking about Judah? Are we talking about Jerusalem? Or are we talking about all of them? Maybe? I don't know. Let me get rid of that circle there, because all of them? Maybe? So what do we have here? Let's go through all of our notes that we've taken here. So we have, because what I want to do is I just want to condense what we've talked about today. Because that's one thing, is reading it and then not coming out with something kind of defeats the purpose of reading. Kind of defeats the purpose of reading it, because then you're just kind of filling your head with questions and stuff, and you're not really getting any answers. So if we look here at this beginning section here, where it's talking about Judah, and it's talking about gathering together during this short reprieve that you're going to have, because the judgment of the Lord is coming quick. And that's what it says. And hurry up before it overtakes you. Hurry up before it overtakes you. Seek the Lord's favor, because you may find that God will hide you from his judgment. And then he starts talking about these different cities. He talks about Gaza, the Gaza Strip, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and I'm assuming, actually, let's look real quick. Let's see, a map of Judah. Let's do a map of Judah. So we have these. Can we make it bigger? Oh, here we go. Click to enlarge picture. Okay, so we have these different cities here. Yep. Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod. And these are all part of Philistia. So you have Judah, that's down in here. And then you have Moab, that's over here. Then you have the city of the Ammonites over here. So he's talking about here, and here. That's what God is talking about when he's talking about all this judgment and stuff. And Philistia, right? This section over here. This is all filled with like Assyrians. These are like old Assyrian villages, right? So, anyways, we get this kind of idea here. Gaza will be deserted. So Gaza is going to be deserted. Then he says Ashkelon will become a heap of ruin. So to the north of that, that's going to be a ruin. Ashdod, the invaders will drive the people away by noon, which could just connote. It could just be like, hey, it's going to come quick. And Ekron, where's Ekron at? I don't see Ekron on here. That could be just another name for another city somewhere. I'm assuming it's somewhere in this area. That's what I'm assuming. Will be overthrown. All right. So it talks about those coastal cities. So it goes from talking about Jerusalem and Judah, and then it talks about these cities over here. You guys need to get your stuff together. because your reprieve is coming to an end. And then all these coastal cities that you see, they're going to be laid to waste. Oh man, because where's Babylon compared to where? Let's see, Babylon, um, Babylon and Judah map. So let's see where these places are. Comparatively is what I want to see, and I like simple maps because then they don't overcomplicate things. So Babylon, well, that's the Babylonian Empire. Where's Babylon? Okay, so Babylon's over here. So Babylon's not coming from the sea. Is that who invades them? See, this lets you know that how much I don't know about the Bible, is because I'm trying to think of who invades them, and if Babylon's the one that invades them, and I think from the context of what we got before, that is what happens. But it talks about invaders coming. Because usually invaders will come, they'll come from the sea, and they'll just like usually invaders will come to sea. Did you guys see any of the map stuff that I just did? I hope you did. If you didn't, then invaders usually come by the sea. So where the Mediterranean Sea is, all these things are going to be wiped out. Like all these lands, Gaza up to Jaffa probably, are going to be wiped out, and that's what the Lord's saying here in verse 4 even through 5. He says, "Beware you who live by the sea, the people who came from Crete." And then that was actually a pretty cool note. Was these people from Crete were actually a very specific people, and they were known for like being executioners. Actually, the name of them is like executioners. They were also personal guards for David, but they were specifically just men of violence, And from chapter 1, we can see that this kind of theme of violence inherent, in wicked people. And so now God's calling out these people in Crete. And then it says the Lord, going down from verse 5 here, the Lord's message is against you, Canaan, land of Philistines. I will destroy everyone who lives there. The sea coast will be used as pastures by the shepherds and as pens for their flocks. Those who are left from the kingdom of Judah will take possession of it by the sea. They will graze in the house of Ashkelon. They will lie down in the evening. Psalm 23 is what that's what it reminded me of. Verse 7 in Zephaniah 2 just reminded me of lying down in green pastures. You will lead me to lie down in green pastures. For your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then it talks about in that verse later on, for the Lord, their God will intervene for them and restore their prosperity. I thought that was kind of cool. So if you can just imagine that these people here in Judah, whoever's left in Judah after Judah is punished, are going to be able to go into this land of Philistia, this coastal area here, and settle down there and use it for their flocks and be shepherds there and have the land. And then God talks about Moab and the Ammonites, which are over here on this other side, which, if Babylon's going to come from the east, those are probably going to be the first cities to fall, is what I'm assuming. Either that, or why am I not thinking of this? If Babylon's already taken Israel, and Israel's already in captivity, and I have to look at this I'd have to look at this context and make sure and see if this is what's going on. If Israel's already captured by Babylon, Babylon might be going around and either flanking both sides. So that's something that I'd have to look into. a little bit more and see if that's what's going on. And that's why both, because maybe God is talking about, maybe God is setting them up and saying, look, you're going to be taken by both sides. That's something I need to look up. I want to make sure that I'm going to get the history right on that, because that might not be what happens. But that's what it sounds like is going to happen. It sounds like that's what God is putting forth, is like, look, you're going to be surrounded on both sides. The coastal lands are going to be taken, and even these other sides. These other sides are also going to be taken. I've heard Moab's taunts. I've heard the Ammonites' insults, and they taunt my people and verbally harass those living in Judah. And then, what did it say? This 29 footnote here was that they bragged about the size of their territory. Is like a good translation for that. So they bragged about the size of their territory. And then verse 9, we're back down here in the middle. So right here, therefore, as surely as I live, says the Lord of the armies of Israel, be certain that Moab will become like Sodom and Gomorrah. And one of the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah, and we see that in Ezekiel, is that they were wealthy and had a lot, but they lacked generosity for the people that didn't have a lot. And so that's what it sounds like to me here in verse 9, because when a city is being compared to another city, it's not just how they're going to be judged or the judgment that they're going to get, but also the sin that led to the judgment. And so that's what I see here, is that it's not just that you're going to be destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah, but you're going to be destroyed because of the same sins of Sodom and Gomorrah. You lacked generosity. You had a lot, and you, instead of helping out, you lacked the generosity to help out these other cities. You lacked the generosity, and you went at the mouth about how great you are without being generous. So then we go down to 10. So verse 10 here now. This is how they will be repaid for their arrogance, for they taunted and verbally harassed the people of the Lord's armies. The Lord will terrify them, for he will weaken all the gods of the earth. All the distant nations will worship the Lord in their land. Now, this is making sense to me. And again, I need to look it up to make sure that this is how it happens. But if this is because God's talking about judgment, he's bringing down judgment. He's going to bring down judgment to Judah and Jerusalem. And if he's going to have to if he's going to use Babylon, and if Babylon has taken over Israel, then he's probably going to come down both sides and take Judah from both sides. That's just what I'm guessing. I'd have to look at the history again, but that just makes sense, because that's why I was wondering, why is God talking? Why are we talking about Moab? Why are we talking about the Ammonites? Why are we talking about all these different coastal cities? But seeing the map, it makes sense, because those cities surround Judah. And so, of course, when Babylon comes through, they're going to take those cities as well. But now we're seeing that God had a purpose for those cities being taken here, which is, that's pretty crazy. It's pretty, wow. So here we go. Now, I did point out again, now in verse 11, where he talks about, for he will weaken all the gods of the earth, all the distant nations will worship the Lord of their lands. That's, I would look up Unseen Realm, Dr. Michael Heiser, and Unseen Realm is it's a really dense book. I wouldn't say it's actually a lot of pages. It's like 400 pages, but it's really scholarly, so it's really hard to read sometimes. So what I would do is I would actually just look up him and look up Deuteronomy 32. Dr. Michael Heiser, that's Heiser, and then look up Deuteronomy 32. And then he's got a ton of videos on YouTube. He's got all kinds of lectures that he's done and everything like that. But his hypothesis is that whenever you see the word Elohim, God's, little g, that a lot of times in our American brain, we think, that's talking about idols. It's talking about not real gods. but that the Jewish mindset, actually, because they're surrounded by all these different Mesopotamian countries surrounded by them, that they actually believe that these gods are real spiritual beings. And so why should we discount that belief, right? So why should we say that there's no other spiritual beings out there, these little gods? Now, that doesn't mean, again, and Michael Heiser will even say this, that doesn't mean that God isn't supreme and that he isn't the God of gods, but it may actually gives him more power, because he's saying he's not just the God of idols, and he's not just the God of wooden things and things made of gold. He's the God of other spiritual beings. He's the one who created them. And they have taken, what he has given them and squandered it. Just so spiritual realm, physical realm kind of thing. Just so look it up. Dr. Michael Heiser, Deuteronomy 32, and also Unseen Realm. It's really cool. So then he talks about the Ethiopians will die by my sword. The Lord will attack the north and destroy Assyria. He will make Nineveh a heap of ruins. So I have to look that up. I really need to look this up. I should know more Bible history, and I actually feel ashamed that I don't know a whole lot about it. But because it was taught to me, and I remember this. But I'm wondering, did Assyria might have came in first, taken over Israel, and then Babylon came in and swept through and taken the rest out. Israel and Judah. I think that might be how it happened. I'll double check, and when we do Zephaniah 3, I'll have that info for you. But I think that might be happening. So that might justify why he's talking about, Ethiopia and Assyria and Nineveh. But he talks about judgment on them as well. There will be desert, barren, flocks and herds will lie down in the middle of it. And it'll just be a wasteland. It'll be run over with scavengers, is kind of the context here. Scavengers will be everywhere. Everything will be, the buildings will be exposed to the enemies. And then verse 15, it ends. This is how the once proud city will end up. The city was so secure. And what is this? 54. And I think here he's still probably talking about like Assyria and Nineveh and all that jazz. This is how the once proud city will end up. The city that was so secure, she thought to herself, I am unique. No one can compare to me. What a heap of ruins she has become, a place where wild animals live. Everyone who passes by her taunts her and shakes his fist. So that's two in like a nutshell. So in a nutshell, it's just kind of like, hey, Judah, people of Jerusalem, you need to get yourselves ready, because this reprieve, this time that you've had, that where, you think you got it good and you think nothing's going to go wrong, it's about to go down. And it's about to go down all around you. And God is putting his judgment all around. He's going to destroy everything so that the people who are left are going to be able to take over it, and it's going to be shepherds. That's the gist of it. It's everything around you. I'm bringing judgment on Jerusalem and Judah specifically, and everything around you is gonna fall too, and you're gonna see it, and it's gonna happen fast. So you need to get ready, and that's what 2 verse 3, which is what was it was a verse. The verse of the day in the Bible app yesterday. Seek the Lord's favor, all you humble people of the land who have obeyed his commands. Strive to do what is right. Strive to be humble. Maybe you will be protected on the Lord's day of judgment. So now, reading all of that judgment, like, you better start doing good, because it's going to go down. And maybe if you sought after the Lord now, and the only people that are going to seek after the Lord are the people who have been seeking after them in the first place and keeping his justice and commands. If they strive to do right, and they strive to be humble, maybe they'll be hidden from the things to come, and they'll be a part of that, remnant that's left that can, cultivate the land and keep it. So that's chapter 2, guys. That's Zephaniah chapter 2. This is about an hour. Oh, we're about 2 hours in, so that was a little bit longer. I hope you guys are enjoying this. I'm gonna save all these, and I'm gonna post them up on my Facebook page. If you would like to have these notes as well, I'd be more than happy to send a link over so you can download them. But this is Zephaniah 2. Tomorrow we're gonna read Zephaniah 3. I'm gonna be back at 6 o'clock, and we're gonna do the same thing over again. I'd love if everybody was a little bit more interactive. It'd be cool. I'd love to get your insights if you're reading along with me, especially. To get your insights. What are you getting? And then again, I'll definitely call those out and I'll be like, hey, let's look into that a little bit deeper. Because I think, again, it's all about understanding. It's all about understanding. And you see what I had to do, because you could just take things at face value and you could say, oh, he's just listing a bunch of different nations here. But then to see the map, and it's so funny because yesterday I was more into Hebrew words and I was looking up Hebrew words left and right. But then today I felt like I was mostly in maps, and I was just like, what, why are we naming off all these cities? These are questions that you need to, if you're reading something and you start asking yourself these questions, what does a city have to do with anything? That's what you need to explore. Go after it. Look it up and say, what does a city have to do with anything? Yeah, we've read Assyria. Yeah, we've read Nineveh. Yeah, we've read Ashkelon and Gaza. Moab. We've heard about these, but what does this have to do with anything? How does this connect with something? And again, that goes back to my whole point of where's it at? Where's my note at here? A literary context. Don't draw on it. But that whole idea of literary context, that's what we want to know here. We want to know what is the author, what is this prophet, what is Zephaniah? Because this is the word of the Lord that was given to him. And I should understand what it's talking about. I should understand what it's talking about. That's the importance of the Bible. And I think we get that lost a lot because what we end up trying to do is proving the Bible instead of understanding the Bible. You either believe it or you don't. And I think I think to squander the opportunity to understand it by trying to prove it is kind of getting old. And I think that's one of the reasons why people don't take it seriously anymore, is because we're too busy trying to prove that it's real instead of just taking it for ourselves, it's real. So let's understand it. Let's understand it. And I think, and the fact of the matter is usually when you hear people's responses and stuff to not believing the Bible, it's because of our lack of understanding of what's in it. We don't understand what's in it, and so people will poo-poo us away because we don't even know. Because I don't even know, did Assyria attack Israel first and then Babylon came down? These are things I should know, and hopefully now me diving into the Bible and reading it this way, that I'm going to understand that. So when I get asked these questions, I'm going to say, well, this is how it had to happen. It makes sense. This is just how it had to happen. This is how it happened. These are the reasonings. This is the reason that the Bible gives for these things happening. This is why it happened. These people weren't just judged just willy-nilly out of anything. These people were conceited. They were violent. And they they weren't generous. And then also too is hyperbole, because the thing is at the very beginning it talks about destroying everybody on the face of the earth, and even in the Hebrew it talks about in the land, and it's sure enough, as far as the eye can see, destroying everybody. But then you go a couple verses down and it talks about how there's still people living there. That doesn't sound like a God who completely destroyed and burned everything up. So guys, sorry, tangent, soapbox, coming off of it. That was Zephaniah 2, and we're going to explore Zephaniah 3 tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I really hope that you're enjoying this, guys. Let me know if you have. This video is going to be up on YouTube, and it's still going to be up on Facebook, and I'm even streaming to Twitter if you're a Twitter person. I'm trying to get more in that, and so I'm just like streaming everywhere I can. I'm even thinking about adding a couple more services like LinkedIn and stuff like that too. But for all you Facebook guys, that's where I'm at in the chat. So if you wanted to chat with me, that's where I'm going to be at. And so that's where I'm going to respond and interact with community. So if you want to be a part of that, Facebook is definitely where you're going to want to be at, but you can still view the stream on YouTube and on Periscope on Twitter, and so that's where that's at. If you want to rewatch this, YouTube is a really good place to do it. YouTube helps me keep track of views. I mean, all of them help me keep track of views, but I kind of like YouTube as far as like if you want to watch a replay of it. So there we go, guys. Yep, it's almost 8 o'clock, and I'm not trying to wind the clock down because dinner and stuff. So love you guys. Talk to you guys later. Peace. Let me stop the stream here.